the things we do at NSD is we really look at design, restoration, and planning projects, assessment projects through the lens of the aquatic species that are utilizing that habitat. So as a fish biologist, I look at the overall salmon recovery process in the Nooksack River and look at the specific limiting habitat factors in the Nooksack River, and then try to relate potential restoration or protection opportunities as to how well they address those limiting factors. We identified the proportion of the watershed that's above the average snow line, and in Skookum Creek it's about 33%. In the upper South Fork Nooksack it's about 28%, and Hutchinson Creek, which is often compared to Skookum Creek, it's about 4%. So in terms of contributing tributaries in this area, Skookum Creek adds a lot more in terms of a cold water refuge. The limiting habitat elements that are reducing the salmon population in the upper South Fork, temperature is number one. Further protection to those areas that provide important components like cold water to a system is going to be important to the long-term health and the long-term contribution of those habitat elements. If we had a fully forested system here that was a mature climax forest, we would probably have 4 to 7% lower peak flows, and the peak flows in the system are what is causing the incision or the cutting down of the creek into its bed so that it is somewhat disconnected from the surrounding floodplain, which reduces the overall capacity for the habitat. So if the current land management continues in Skookum Creek, we will continue to see those increased peak flows from harvested areas moving downhill and further incising the creek. And we could see a loss of potential habitat in Skookum Creek, not just sort of maintaining the status quo of where it's incised and disconnected from its floodplain, but it could become further incised and further disconnected, which would increase the velocity of the water as it moves out of the system and potentially decrease the contribution of flow during those low flow periods. So what we're risking is the potential long-term contribution over a more extended period of a cold water source for listed salmon, as well as a potential further degradation of habitat or degradation of habitat in a system that really has excellent potential. So as we think about changing climate and we think about the idea of resiliency in ecosystems, the protecting what works, protecting what's functional now becomes more and more important. As we think about Skookum Creek and its contribution to the South Fork Nooksack, identifying the level of contribution, 22% of the flow that comes in during that low flow period, during the hot summer, becomes more and more important. As we look at water temperatures rising in the main stem, we look at air temperatures rising, we have to protect those last few places that are still contributing cold water at a reasonable amount into the main stem habitat. So as we look at agencies or organizations like Whatcom Land Trust, we really count on land trusts and other organizations that can actually acquire land and hold land. There are several organizations and agencies in Whatcom County that do restoration, but there's not as many that are willing to acquire land and hold on to it and protect it in perpetuity. And Whatcom Land Trust is one of those entities.